Hi guys, welcome to class. Let's consider organisms which we cannot see with our eyes, invisible organisms. That was how they were referred to initially, invisible organisms or invisible beings. And initially they were thought to be the cause of disease. So before the 16th century, humans thought that there are small invisible things or invisible organisms that cause disease, and they also cause fermentation. But however, advance in science made us believe that they are not invisible. What was lacking was a proper scientific equipment to visualize them. And we're talking about microorganisms. Now, the definition gives it away. There's not too much big deal about it. We're simply referring to organisms that can only be viewed with the aid of a microscope. In a nutshell, the first organisms that can only be viewed. And really, the word only in science is actually very rare for you to use it factually. Because in science, we always say there are always exceptions. So there's no absolute. Most cases, there's no absolute in science. But there are some rare instances where we are approved to use the word only. A microorganism falls under that category because they refer to organisms we use that something there. So let's keep this guy a minute. Let's obey the rule of English. That can only be seen with the aid of a microscope. And they are also referred to as microbes. They are also referred to as microbes. So here, microbes, microorganism, just like a syllogism. So they actually mean the same thing. So they are also referred to. They are also referred to as microbes. So microorganisms. Now, we mentioned the word microscope there. Microscope also has its own little bit of interesting history because, like I stated, before the 16th century, that's the 16th century, that should be 17th century, before the year 1600s, that was when they thought that these small and invisible organisms caused disease and fermentation because the concept of saying organisms, microorganisms make up the pathogenesis of diseases was not an acceptable theory in the late 18th centuries. So it first started in 1670 when the Dutch lens maker Anton van Leeuwenhoek, when he viewed his so-called animalculus. We call them animalculus. The so-called wee animalculus. So wee animalculus. So it's so-called wee animalculus. So in 1670, with the aid of his single lens microscope, he was able to view this structure. He called them wee animalculus. So he saw cells of different shape, which he got from different specimens, including scraping from his teeth. Which of course you later know that they were actually Streptococcus mutans. And he got the rainwater in the gutter beside his house. He viewed it under his single lens microscope, and he saw those structures of different sizes, which he called wee animalculus. Before later we had during further study, then they were then referred to as when Charles Hooke, the father of the cell theory, viewed them and now regarded them as cells. And ever since then, it has also helped. That's what also contributed to the field of biology, which we call taxonomy, because with the fact that the scientists were not able to view these organisms, then they needed to be classified. So we then move from the single lens light microscope to the electron microscope. Those came around in the 1930s. That's where you use, rather than using a source of light, so you use a beam of light, a photo. You are using photons to view structures, and those microscopes have the ability to magnify sizes 200 times more than what the light microscope will give you. So you could see structures of bacteria, structures of viruses, protozoa, in very much fine details, helping in their classification. So that was what kickstarted the field which you call microbiology, because now that we could view these structures, we could study them, we could classify them, we could know their mode of living, growth, we could observe their growth, their reproduction, as well as the ability to cause infections. So, which opened up this field of science called microbiology. So, where we said microbiology is simply defined as the study of microorganisms. So, a person who studies microbiology is called a microbiologist. So, microbiology, well, some of you in the course of, so microbiology is defined as the study of microorganisms. Is defined as the study of microorganisms. Is defined as the study of microorganisms. So we said microbiology. Yeah. Or study of microorganisms in bracket microbes. So someone who studies, the scientist is not someone, because you have to be a scientist before you walk into any university until you want to study microbiology. So a scientist that studies microbiology is called a microbiologist. So a scientist that study, and I tell you, microbiology is actually an interesting field, particularly when you want to go into the medical field, because most of the infections or diseases condition you come around on a daily basis in the hospital have one kind of pathology associated with a certain microorganism. So a scientist that study microbiology is called the microbiologist. Yeah, it's called the microbiologist. So in the next class we'll look at the classification of microorganisms. See you in the next class.